Nina Turner was on CNN recently, speaking of the Middle East, and the discussion of the Middle East did arrive to the table. I want you to hear what Nina said. There were some good things that she said, but there were some things that Nina Turner said that I felt like when it came to this particular issue with Gaza, I feel like she did not push back on the people at the table when they presented false information in front of her that I know she knows is incorrect. So what's this really all about? Let's get into this clip here with Nina Turner, and this is Abby Phillips on CNN. They're starting off this conversation discussing Trump agrees with host who calls, this is Kamala Harris's husband, a crappy, and you guys see the word there. Listen to this.
Possibility that one of the people on the ticket on the Democratic side could be a Jew.
Yes, that is true.
And that's possible.
I campaigned with twice a Jewish candidate by the name of Bernard Sanders, senator from Vermont. And I watched my senator be called a self-hating Jew. His family perished in the Holocaust. His father made it out and some others, but a lot of his family perished in the Holocaust. So just even listening to that entire conversation has me enraged. To use Palestinians as a racial slur. Palestinians matter just like Israelis matter. Both people are entitled to live a good life, and we got to find a way to make that happen.
Pause. So she's referring to another thing that Donald Trump did. I don't know if people are aware of this, but Donald Trump made a statement saying that Kamala Harris, she's like a Palestinian now. First of all, she's not like a Palestinian. Kamala Harris takes money from AIPAC. Kamala Harris is pro-Israel. Kamala Harris is having the same talking points that Joe Biden did when it comes to Israel. Don't get it twisted, boo. Ain't like Kamala Harris out here in these streets, because she's not. Second of all, when you make a statement that says someone is like a Palestinian, that gives a negative connotation to what it means to be a Palestinian. And being a Palestinian shouldn't be a shameful thing. It shouldn't be a negative thing at all. So that needs to stop. Now let's get to what Nina just said, that both groups should be able to have a good life. One of those groups already has a good life. The Israelis in Israel have a good life. They're the ones occupying. They're the ones oppressing. It just, I don't understand this type of logic, but I guess if she would push back the way that I do, she wouldn't be on CNN in the first place. That's why she's there, because they know she's only going to go so far with the talking points. People got to understand that. Let's go on.
But for President Donald J. Trump to continue to sable rattle in that way, what has the Biden-Harris administration done that has been against Israel? They have not. It is our bombs that are bombing Palestinian babies over there in the Gazas. And as many Democrats have said, the cries of a Palestinian baby and the cries of an Israeli baby sounds the same. And so I'm just troubled, even just around this table, that just the total disregard for Palestinian lives. And then to intimate that the Biden-Harris administration has not done anything. They have funded time and time again. 40,000 Palestinians have been killed.
Pause. It's more than 43,000 Palestinians, to be honest with you. But also to add to that, the Biden-Harris administration has been funding this, but this is Nina talking out both sides of her mouth. Because if you follow her on Twitter, you will see that she supports Kamala Harris. So if you feel this way, you feel that passionately about what's happening to the Palestinian people, why are you supporting this administration? Why are you supporting Kamala Harris? Because see, Nina still she's still, even though she said, shout out to Cornel West when he decided to run, third party or whatever. She gave him his props on Twitter, but she still want to have one foot in the Democratic Party. And what I've also noticed about her in particular is that when she was a part of the Bernie campaign, she was much more assertive. What happened to that Nina? What happened to the Nina that was powerful on the mic, that was just really just taking things by storm, could come up on the stage and just tell it like it is? What happened to that Nina? She is subdued. She's not the way that she used to be. So I believe this switch started after she was, I guess, basically hammered by AIPAC when she was running for office, and AIPAC threw up all that money against her because she wasn't pro-Israel enough. It seems like ever since then, she has been a little bit more subdued. This isn't the Nina that we all knew that was out there campaigning with Bernie Sanders. So again, like I said, this is why the progressive movement didn't get anywhere in the United States. Because when you have people who were quote unquote leaders of that movement and they're just willing to go along with the corporate candidates that they told you not to go along with, and Kamala Harris is corporate, then that just right there, the whole movement just dies. There is no progressive movement. I wish people would stop saying this on social media because there is no progressive movement, okay? So just stop it with the okie doke. Stop. But this is what you see. It's not just her. TYT's doing it too. Everybody just jumped on this Kamala Harris train. The same people that told you that you should not support candidates that take corporate money because that is who they're going to legislate for. That is who they're going to work for when they're in office. And that's the truth. It is what it is. But now all of a sudden, all this don't look at corporate money. Now all of a sudden, that's not a problem. All of a sudden, corporate money isn't a problem. All of a sudden, genocide is no longer a problem. Let's continue.
I don't think anyone disregarded Palestinian lives. I'm an Arab American.
But I wonder how much do you think that will ultimately matter for Kamala Harris?
I mean, I think the vice president, so far she has shown herself to want to continue what the administration that she is part of wants to do. Now, she has softened some of the, she has said, in other words, she is troubled about the suffering of Palestinians, but saying something and doing something about it is two different things.
Then why are you supporting her? And here's the thing. You don't have to support anyone. Does everybody get this? Like, she doesn't have to support anyone. That's the thing. And people are saying like, oh, well, should she support Donald Trump? No, she don't have to support anybody. She can just keep quiet about all this. I sure as hell, you don't see me out there on Twitter making, excuses for Kamala Harris, supporting Kamala Harris. No, you don't see me out there supporting Donald Trump. No, you ain't got to do nothing. So this makes me wonder, was something promised to Nina Turner? Did the Kamala Harris administration reach out to Nina and maybe offer her some kind of position if she were to win? It makes you wonder, don't it? Because if she's doing all these things and Kamala's not changing the way that this situation is unfolding, and she will continue to give money and weapons to Israel, and you're against that, and you got a problem with that. This is the Nina Turner that was pro BDS, but now you're willing to settle for that. I'm looking at you with a side eye, boo, because that right there tells me somebody called you and offered you something. I haven't been a politician, but I'm a grown woman. And I'm old enough to know how it works. You got offered, somebody offered you something. I don't know if it was a media spot. I don't know if it was a committee spot or whatever, but somebody contacted her.
We, as the United States of America, as any other nation, should want both peoples to be able to have freedom, justice, and security, because that brings freedom, justice, and security for everybody in that region.
I totally agree. But the problem is identifying who is the cause of the instability, of the war, of the violence. And there is only one cause. It's Hamas.
Pause. This man, if I would have been on this panel, would have never got another word in. And I'm going to tell you why. The cause is not Hamas. Again, you cannot start with October 7th. You have to talk about, you want to blame Hamas? Okay, cool. Why was it created in the first place? I don't know. It kind of seems like when you occupy people, you put them into an open air prison, you limit what they can eat, what they can drink, you limit their freedom of movement. I could see something rising up from that. What do you expect those people to do? Because I'll be damned, I tell you right now, I couldn't have been alive back in the day, because I just would have been gone. Because ain't no way I would sit up there and put up there and tolerate with that madness. No freaking way. But here he is. Now he's sitting right next to her. Listen to this.
And I do believe there are a number of people on the left in this country who are not rooting for Israel on this thing. They've got it in their mind that Israel is somehow the aggressor or the cause of this. It was Hamas who took the kidnappings. It was Hamas who did the raping. It was Hamas who did the murdering. And Israel.
Pause. So here he is continuing the same lie about the assaults on October 7th, which has been debunked by multiple media outlets. Does Nina Turner push back on that? Let's see.
Israel has to be able to defend itself, and the Palestinian people will be better off when Hamas
Every
is
nation
gone.
has a right to defend itself. So we're not.
No, she doesn't push back on it. She doesn't push back. You see the problem here, folks? That's why she's sitting on that panel. That's why she's sitting on that CNN panel. You wouldn't see me on that panel. You wouldn't see Max Blumenthal on that panel. Everybody see this? You wouldn't see Professor Morandi on that panel. You wouldn't see most of us that are correct on this issue. You wouldn't see us on that damn panel because we would read him in real time. She is there because she is going to push a little bit, but she's never going to push all the way. Does everybody see it now? Does everybody see the game that has been played to you by leaders of the progressive movement? Some of these people were fine walking away from the movement because their pockets got a little bit thick. Let's continue.
Saying anything new on that, Scott. This is my point here on this. We have to humanize Palestinians, just as somebody that believes that Israel has a right to exist. I believe Palestinians have a right to exist. Like, I'm not picking and choosing here. I think all of those lives in that region matter, but you have some people who disregard, just like that conversation we just listened to. They use Palestinian as a racial slur. And that is wrong. As you dehumanize people, you make it easier for them to be just killed. You want to keep going back to October 7th, and let's talk about the 40,000 Palestinians who have been killed and the millions who are.
She takes it back to October 7th, but she doesn't mention what happened prior to October 7th. This is the Nina Turner that was a democratic socialist. Democratic socialism, one of the things that they teach you is about the BDS movement. One of the things they teach you, particularly in DSA, is that you cannot side with Israel. That's one of the main things that's in the DSA handbook. So why is she sitting here pretending like it just started on October 7th? Why is she pretending like none of this took place prior to October 7th? Does everybody see this game? And now you see a lot of other people going along with it now that Kamala Harris has been announced as the nominee. All these other progressives that was talking about a political revolution, they decided to pad their pockets, okay? Some of the same people who sat up there and they made fun of David Pakman and said, oh, he's a liberal and he's such a sellout. Some of those same damn people decided to become damn sellouts, okay? All you got to do is look on YouTube and you can see it. And the same people will sit up there and they'll call me right wing because I am willing to call out the bullshit. And I am willing to engage in conversations with people that don't agree with me on everything. We just had a panel of Black voters. We didn't all agree on everything. But I'm the sellout. When you got some of these people making millions of dollars by cozying up with Democrat establishment when they told you to get out there and fight in the streets. And I never saw them out in the street. Sitting behind a desk. I never saw them out in the street. I didn't see them out in the street for the pro-Palestinian protests. I didn't see them out in the street to go knock on doors for Bernie Sanders. I didn't see them knocking on doors for AOC. I saw them sitting behind a desk and getting rich and getting plastic surgery and getting a lot of money and getting bigger houses. That's what I fucking saw. And you look around and you see all of it. All of it. Half of these people don't really believe in anything. Half of these people don't have a moral base or moral compass. Half of these people just try to pad their pockets. Let's continue.
are living in famine right
Every
now.
every single
think that they-
You want to
Palestinian.
blame all that
every,
on
every,
is it Hamas's fault that this
yes,
is still going on?
100%.
get in
Yes,
here.
100%.
Melissa,
yes.
go ahead.
Netanyahu can stop this
And just,
right now.
I think you make a valid point on using Palestinian as sort of a slur or to otherize. I think that the broader point here is this conflict could be over tomorrow if Hamas agreed to a ceasefire.
The conflict could be over tomorrow.
That doesn't mean that there won't be decades.
Netanyahu would agree.
Well, there
What?
you
Agree
have
to
to
what?
release
He has
hostages.
Agree
been
to
on
what?
record. Look, there were people whose family members were hostages in D.C. at the protest.
And by the way, there's plenty of Israelis who don't support
who
Netanyahu,
don't-
but if the hostages
Now, here is another thing. Nina doesn't mention anything about the Palestinian hostages. Nina doesn't mention anything about the Palestinian detainees, which CNN actually reported on this. Doesn't mention anything about that. Nothing about how the Palestinians have been abused for decades prior to October 7th. Nothing about that. It's just go back to October 7th. Oh, let's try to both sides. Let me make something very clear, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot sit up here in both sides occupation. You cannot sit up here in both sides oppression. And no one should even have to tell you that. People, this is ridiculous. This is freaking ridiculous. This is why you'll never see me on there. This is why you'll never see these people bring me on their show. I would tell them this to their face. How dare you? How dare you sit up there and tell to both sides oppression? Would you both sides slavery? Would you do that? Would you both sides Jim Crow? No, I don't think so.
From a political perspective, I really do wonder how this is going to play out, because I think one of the things we're hearing from Trump in that clip is frustration that the politics of this issue has not swung his way. And it has not.
Yeah, I think let's look at this conversation, what Nina is saying and sort of the friction within the Democratic Party. I think it's absolutely moving this way. Trump's going to amplify it, and we'll hear it more and more.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't see any evidence. Trump is frustrated that he hasn't seen American Jews swing to his side of the ledger, swing to the Republican Party. We really have not seen that.
Because Jews tend, again, resident crappy Jew. I don't know that I speak for all of my people, but I can speak for some of us. The reason why Jews tend to be left of center is because one of the core values of Judaism is something called tikkun olam. It's about repairing the world. It's about social justice. It's about making the world a better place. People can interpret that different ways, obviously. That's not necessarily politically aligned with one party or another, but it is not aligned with Trump. Trump wants to burn everything down. Trump wants to belittle everyone. I hear Scott talking about how Trump would be a greater friend to Israel. It's not clear to me how,
By not blaming Israel for the obvious mayhem that has been
Biden has been a good friend to Israel.
Biden has not done that, Scott. You know that.
The Democratic Party has huge elements that believe Netanyahu is at fault and not Hamas.
There are millions of Democrats in this country.
There are Israelis.
Yes.
There are
And a lot of them
Israelis
hate
who hate
Israel.
Netanyahu. Most Israelis don't like Netanyahu. So the idea that somebody's critical of Netanyahu does not mean that they're not a friend to Israel, because Israelis themselves.
By the way, Donald
of
Trump
Netanyahu.
himself critical of Netanyahu.
Oh yeah,
They really glossed over that, it seems like. But by the way, this speaks to a broad thing. I think Donald Trump, who was a novice when he came into politics, tends to look at voting blocks and people and demographics as these monoliths. And he's always struggled to understand, why couldn't you be with me if you're this? So you're Jewish, you must only care about Israel, therefore you are with me, and if you're not, you're a bad Jew.
You might call it identity politics.
You know what? It might go.
But you know what? This isn't really about Donald Trump at this point, because the administration that's in charge, which is the Biden-Harris administration, the genocide happened under them. And I'm willing to make a bet, ladies and gentlemen. I'm willing that if this genocide would have happened under Donald Trump's administration, I know we had thousands of people out in the streets for those protests, but I'm willing to make a bet if it happened under Donald Trump's administration, honey, we probably would have had that 5% out in the streets for a movement. Because some people are reluctant to criticize the party that they are a part of, even when that party is doing some type of harm. So there may have been some people who feel that same way, that were upset about what was happening, but they didn't want to take it out to the streets because they didn't want to go against their own political party. I'd add this as well. The Sonia Massey shooting that happened, right? I'm willing to bet you if that would have happened under Donald Trump's administration, people would have been out in the streets, just like we were for the George Floyd protests, by the 100,000s. I'm willing to bet. Sometimes people choose party over principle. Malcolm X tried to warn us about the media. Malcolm X tried to warn us. Shout out to Z Squirrel for this. A desperate activist tells Malcolm X that the situation is hopeless as there are too many powerful interests and too few to oppose them. Listen to what Malcolm X said here in this audio clip.
There are too few of us. There are too many men up there with all their cop cars and everything.
That's what they're always telling you. Never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are. Never let the man that you're against form your opinions. This is the trick that's played on everyone who's oppressed. The first thing, an occupation, when you have a revolution in the country, the first thing you take over is the radio. And then you start telling the people that everybody, the war is over. And so all of them surrender. No, they believe that thing right there. And once they take that over, they start telling you where you are and where they are, and you fall right in line. It's plain thought control. The majority of the American people aren't segregationists. That the majority of the American people aren't imperialists. But the government is, the structure is, the power faction is. So, how then do all the majority go along with it? Because those who sit in power over the television, over the radio, and over the press is constantly telling those who are the masses how free they are. And how
everybody hear that?
How this they are and how that they are.
So that's something to remember when we think about what we see in corporate media. We got to remember some of these things that Malcolm X said, some of the things that MLK said. They tried to warn people back then, right? So we do have to remember these things. Crazy times, folks, crazy times.